This is a RacinDirt.com production. RacinDirt.com, getting the dirt on racing.
Hi, and welcome to the first edition of According to Al with 9-time Late Model Series champion Al Perkey. Al, it's kind of an interesting road that brings us here and into this show and what we're trying to accomplish. First off, thanks for the interest on your end. And I know people have read your work in Dirt Late Model Magazine and Late Model Illustrated for the past several years. So nice to have the opinions flowing. Anybody that knows you knows you've got an opinion or 10 on things, and this would be a good format for you to bring those out.
Well, I want to thank you, Trenton, for doing this and having the interest to have me to do it. It's you're right. Anybody that knows me knows that I usually have something to say and short to the point, or at least to the point. Sometimes not so short, I guess. But we're going to see what it happens, and I hope people find it interesting. And one thing that I can promise everyone that's listening is, there's not going to be a lot of politics involved. We're not going to say something because it might not make someone mad. But we're not trying to make anyone mad. But at the same time, if what we talk about, it's some of it is stuff that people might not want to say.
I understand. Let's get a few housekeeping details out of the way. You and I have discussed a minimum of one per month, probably no more than one every other week. So not looking at doing more than two of these per month. This is going to be free to everybody listening to this right now. The first few will be for sure. And honestly, let's just cut to the chase. It'll be sponsor dictated whether it remains free or whether this goes to subscribers only. We're not looking for a ton of marketing partners, but we would love to have 2 or 3 people that we're interested in promoting their products. But in order to do that, the advertisers they'll need to see some numbers, and so hopefully that's where all the audience comes in. They're listening to this in participation. Surely over an 8-hour workday, there will be a good majority of society that can at least minimize this in their browser and be able to listen to this while they're at work. So the first one here, as you're listening to this one, is on YouTube. So pretty compatible across a multitude of platforms, whether you're on a computer or on a mobile device as well. So we'll discuss a few topics every time. We don't have a set length of time that we'll be on with you guys. But we will not waste your time with a bunch of fill trying to meet a certain deadline. So, again, with that, I think pretty clear on my end. Anything there that you want to add?
Well, no, and I hope that everybody understands. Bottom line, money makes the world go round, and I mean, obviously, neither one of us are planning on retiring off of the show or whatever. But we'd like to keep it going, and on your end, it takes money to keep this up and keeps this going, and hopefully maybe we can get some people to listen where it'll be feasible for someone to help us and advertise and get partner up with us. All
right, here we go. I got 4 topics here so far. We might scratch the 4th one depending on time. We don't want to run this thing really long. I want to start with what we've seen out in Tucson here and a couple different aspects. First, the MB Customs Modifieds, they were the support class out there, all 6 races from Tucson International Raceway. The MB Customs cars won 5 of 6. Now, granted, those 5 out of 6 were among 2 drivers who were 2 of the top drivers for the past few years with the U.S. MTS Series. Crone, a former national champion, Jason Crone, and Rodney Sanders is nearly a champion. He was really, really close, had kind of a breakout year last year. What do specialty modified builders, Al, bring to the table that the big manufacturers of race cars can't?
Well, it's the same thing that some of the guys at Late Model's done, and now it's bleeding over into that, and they bring a more hands-on, a more personalized deal by not doing. By not trying to build 300 cars or just trying to do a few, and they do them at a little bit higher cost. But the certain guys are doing them that that have experience and have knowledge, and the catch is you put my knowledge, my experience in this, and we're going to have you a better car than you can just go buy down the street at the regular chassis builder. And some guys have caught on to that, and And what's going to happen is you take and you team up a couple of good drivers in a good car, and you get feedback from those drivers, and you get feedback from obviously Jimmy and that gang, and in combinations, a good combination.
In your opinion, are you paying more for the parts in the race car, or are you paying more to have the phone number and the access?
Oh, it's the phone number and the access. Obviously they're building a quality car, and I'm not real familiar with what they're doing, or so I don't know. I can't say their parts are much better, but they're building a quality car, and not trying to build a cheap car. They're trying to build a good car. Therefore, those parts do cost more, and there's all different grades of tubing out there, from stuff you can buy from 50 cents a foot to $8-9 a foot. And when you're putting that in a car, obviously that makes it if you put expensive tubing, makes the car more. So there's going to be a little bit of it, I'm sure, with the car and the components. But most of it is, at least a good part of it is, being able to call up and say, hey, here, what do we do? This is what we're doing, and this is what our problem is, and hopefully the person that you bought that from, Jimmy in this case, or whatever, that it's, it works out and they can help you.
You lived this in the late model world when you were racing late models. What were the thoughts from the guys that are on the outside? For your career, you ran the Shaw the majority of the time, kind of a mass-produced race car. Now, I know they built those to your specifications, but what's the other side of that feel about the specialty builders?
Well, it drives the cost of the cars up, and it drives the cost of racing up. Is it good for racing? Well, probably not. But if you're one of the guys who buys one of these cars, you hope that nobody else does, or at least few people do, and so you have an advantage. And racers are all about advantage. They're a group of guys who all think they can drive race cars, but yet you give one of them advantage, they'll take it in a heartbeat, and that's what makes us racers, is looking for that advantage, and now if you got a bigger checkbook, you can go buy that advantage, and it's American. That's what it's based on, and that's it's free market, and there you go. But it definitely drives the cost up, and it drives the cost for everyone up, because now we're the guy who's running his weekly track. Can he afford one of those cars? And when USMTS or one of the big mod races come to town, can he compete? Well, maybe, but maybe not.
Based on what you know and what we've discussed here, the ultimate outcome driving the cost of these cars up, and racing is so much a monkey see, monkey do business now. Jimmy Owens getting back involved again with the loose gruff chassis. Now, I can't confirm this, but I've heard they're built out of the same shop that Scott Bloomquist's late models are being built out of, and we know that Brian Rowland and Stormy Scott have those, and they've not debuted yet for the 2013 season. So do you see this going the same road as late model racing? Are we really not that far off in the mod world?
Well, and I guess we kind of ventured into a different thing here. As far as what I'm thinking is, Todd Staley's done an excellent job with modifieds, and he has put modified racing where, and I don't know, I'm looking for the right word here, but where I'm probably going to get, I don't know, I'll just say it. It's a respectable form of racing now. And you say 10, 15 years ago, it was not really. It was a lower class of just some cars with a lot of guys that maybe weren't that good of drivers. Maybe some of them were, but it just really wasn't looked real highly on. And Todd Staley has brought that to a level where it's a very competitive, very good show that he brings to town. But it's, the cost of it is, modified racing in general is getting right there, not too far behind late models. So I guess really to answer your question, it's going to fall right along the same lines as what the late model stuff has done. It's been showed how it works in late model racing, and those guys are going to see that. They're, you know, and anyone who has the money to do that and go purchase one of these cars, you know, they're going to think a little bit about it. And then, of course, obviously, they're, you know, time will tell how well they succeed, certain ones of them. But you know, Terry Phillips has done the same thing with his, you know, Phillips by GRTs around. You know, got some guys that had, you know, had run pretty good in them that maybe you hadn't really heard too much of before, and you know, I think it's not too far right there behind the Lutmall stuff.
The first race out at Tucson this year, switching gears to the late model side of things, Brad Looney led the first 25 laps. He was the pole sitter for that race. He and Jimmy Mars got together, and I guess that's probably not the most fair way to say it. Jimmy Mars hammered Brad Looney once, backed off, and finished spinning him out as he was leading the race. 30-lap feature. It sent Brad spinning into turn 1 and 2. He ultimately never came to a stop. They threw the yellow flag. Brad restarts at the tail. Jimmy restarts out front. We'll get into that in just a minute. First off, your assessment of how that situation went down. Who was in the right? Who was in the wrong?
Well, and obviously I'm looking at it all from video because I wasn't there. So, you know, it may have looked different if you had been there and watched it from there. But what I saw on the video, at the very least, it was a lack of patience by Jimmy. You know, everyone knows that Brad and I have had, you know, an issue or two here in the past, but you know, he was leading the race. He's the leader of the race, and the only justification that Jimmy, in my opinion, that Jimmy could have from doing what he did is if he thought Brad saw him and Brad intentionally pitched him in the wall. And even then, you know, there's several laps to go. Him doing what he did could have wrecked himself, and you know, it didn't. But Brad's still the leader of the race, you know, and you have to give him a little leeway there. He's leading. The racetrack's his. You know, blocking's done in every form of motorsports that there is. And you know, obviously, if he knew Jimmy was out there and Jimmy running that line, yeah, he should have left him a little room. But, you know, he's leading the race. It's Arizona, you know, you do what you got to do. Do I really think Jimmy just spun him out? I don't know. It wasn't in Jimmy's car. It doesn't look real good on the video, but there again, it was on the video, and who knows what was actually going through his mind. Had Jimmy had to back off for him 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 corners, and figured that Brad knew exactly he was out there, and he just kept blocking him, yeah, maybe that was justified. But in this particular instance, I'm really going to have to be on Brad's side and say, you know, he should at least give him another couple opportunities to get by and try to get by without contact. These cars cost a lot of money. Tucson has a high-speed, you know, it's a high-speed racetrack, and it could have tore a lot of stuff up. You know, luckily it didn't tear much up, but you know, ruined Brad's night.
Absolutely, it did, yeah. And again, the video you were talking about, the guys out there did a fantastic job. We'll throw a plug out to RacinDirt.com. Great working partners with us. We're glad to be associated with them when it comes to video out of the Midwest. And the majority of that stuff that you guys see on that website comes from either Stick or I. And great people. They did a phenomenal job with the live broadcast and the video recaps and everything right there. You can see the video for yourself and have a look at it with a subscription there to DirtOnDirt.com.
And I don't mean, sorry to interrupt you there, but I don't really mean just to throw Jimmy under the bus there, because you know, you're racing and that stuff, it's easy to go back and look at that video and rewind it 2 or 3 times and look at what should have happened. That stuff don't happen that slow out there. You know, it happens, and you have to make those decisions. And anybody that's drove a race car will know what I'm saying here. You have to make those decisions, you know, in thousandths of a second. And like I said, I don't want to throw him on the bus. It just looked to me like he should have showed a little more patience.
Let's go way back a little bit. One of the things I want to do is talk about some of your experiences from racing late models in the past. And I know, look, you're going to race as long as you want to race. You've got a more than capable modified right now that you're racing and having a lot of fun with, and we'll talk about that and sprinkle that stuff in. But throughout the course of your career, I'm sure at one point or another you've probably been in a similar situation, probably on both sides. Can you think back to anything where you've been involved in a deal like that sticks out to you?
Oh, I think the one that comes to mind mostly is the Jeremy Payne incident up there.
At Osborne.
I think you guys at Osborne.
That's
yeah,
right.
Excuse me. That you guys have, and I mean that wasn't a bad incident. Obviously, I lifted and he won the heat race and he went on to win the feature. But that kind of deal. I mean, and I know you guys had it on some video and our little conference that I had with him at the skills. And I mean, I like
appreciate
Jeremy.
that.
I get along good with Jeremy, and I get along good with Jeremy. But sometimes you got to say what you're thinking and show him and he and I had the conversation and it had a lot to do with my respect for his boss and at that time and I pretty much told him that that he had used up all of his chances and we could wreck or we could race like we were supposed to, but I didn't wreck him. I didn't spin him out. I didn't tear up any cars or nothing like that. Maybe I should have, but those cars cost money to put back in, so I didn't chose not to. And I don't know. There's if I had time to think about it, I'm sure there's lots of opportunities, and to do that. And now we're on the Jeremy Payne Terry Phillips thing. Terry and I probably the only, and I don't say the only, but one of the only arguments that Terry Phillips and I ever had was about that same kind of deal and it was a Lakeside. And once we started talking about Terry F's list, he'll remember it. But same deal, we were racing side by side, and I thought Terry should have knew I was out there, and he run me off the back straightaway there out there by that wall, and when we got to turn 3, I ran in back of him, and one of the difference was I didn't spin him out. I just jacked him up a little bit and let him know. Well, it ended up, he said, it ended up costing him not to win the race because it knocked his quarter pound into his tire and stuff. But we argued about it and fought about it for a little bit, not fight, but argued about it
for
a while. But I thought that he should have gave me room, and I didn't spin him out. But in that that thing happens all the time, and it's just with this video now.
God bless that video, right, Al?
It's
Let's
hard
go to the
make
tape.
up some story, stuff happens, and that video doesn't lie, and it's been around football and NASCAR racing and that stuff forever, but it's creeping into our sport, and thanks to you guys, and that and now you can see really what happens, and it's it's hard to blame the wrong guy sometimes.
Right.
It's great because you go to a race and you have 3 guys watch a race and you let them describe it and they'll describe 3 different races. So this video's great.
My high school basketball coach, he used to tell us, and this was usually his pre-run suicides or wind sprint speech. Generally the afternoon after a game. He'd get us on the baseline of the court, and he'd go, "Men, the eye in the sky does not lie." And then he would proceed to do everything short of slaughter us. And lo and behold, it didn't lie then, and it certainly doesn't lie now. Although I didn't quite think I played as slow as I did when I watched myself on defense. When I had to watch myself back, that was a little tough. So I've been in the other situation, just not from the motorsports end of it. And in all seriousness, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. The other thing is, if back to the Brad, Jimmy. If Jimmy looked at the video, Jimmy's a smart guy. He's he's, if he's honest with himself, he's probably going to say the same thing I did. Maybe I should have used a little more patience. Maybe I could have won the race because as it worked out, he didn't end up winning the race anyway.
Right.
And if he could have slid by Brad there, he could have probably won the race. So ultimately it cost Jimmy too, not as much as Brad. But I think if Jimmy's honest with himself, he looks at the video, and trust me, that stuff looks different on video than it does from that driver's seat. And, basically because you got a lot more time to think about it.
And one more thing I want to get to here, as far as discussion points, but to kind of wrap this one up, they sent Brad to the back. He never stopped. Now, listen, I'm not in the driver's race, or in the driver's meeting, so I don't know what they said the rules were. Brad never stopped. Jimmy Mars was able to spin him out and then restart on the pole. I don't agree with that at all, the way that went down. I mean, that is horrid race officiating, in my opinion, 100% of the time. Well,
there's two parts to that. The first part is, and like I say, neither one of us was at the driver's meeting, so I don't know. But they threw the yellow, and Brad never stopped. And I don't know what the deal would be there because I wasn't there to see what the driver's meeting. But obviously Brad didn't stop. He didn't lose forward motion, and so he should have got his spot back or wherever he came out or however they were scoring it.
Right.
I'm not a proponent. I'm not a proponent of if Jimmy just spins him out and he stops putting him back up there. That leaves too much judgment, and most of the time the people making the judgment on that deal aren't qualified to make the judgment. But this particular instance, because Brad didn't stop, and if they're not racing to the yellow, ultimately Brad probably should have went back to the lead. It would have been a flagman's call that they threw the yellow prematurely. Worst case scenario, Brad should have went to fifth, not to the tail. But if they're not racing to the yellow, and he throws the yellow and nobody stops, then they're picking a blame because Brad spun out. Now, obviously their case is the reason they threw the yellow is because the flagman threw the yellow, saw Brad spinning out, didn't want cars to be tore up and all that, and they make a case. But if the rule is if you stop on the yellow, you go to the back. If you don't stop, you get your spot back. Then they were wrong.
Well, and how does Jimmy spin him out running second and then restarting the lead? How is that right in any situation to put the race leader to the back and leave the guy that did the spinning to restart out front?
Well,
I mean, that's horrendous.
I hear what you're saying, but Trenton, that creates so much judgment, and there again, we have the video to look at, and the flagmen and the scorers don't have that benefit. And to make that judgment, say to send Jimmy to the back with him, and that's done. You go to a USMTS race and Todd Staley's sitting in the booth and you spin a car out, you go to the back. He does it to Terry Phillips. He does it. It makes no difference who you are. But the thing is, pretty much everybody trusts Todd Staley that he can make that decision, and he showed that he can make it, without favoritism. He's done it to Kelly Shyrock and Terry Phillips. And other guys too, but those are two big names that he's done it to, and he'll do it to anybody.
Right.
And so, he's been around racing, forever, and he has the knowledge to make those calls. Now, I think the whole incident just showed that, the people in Tucson really didn't have the knowledge to make that call if they'd have wanted to, just from the whole way the whole incident was handled. But, I see what you're saying. It alleviates. It puts a lot of judgment into it, and they don't have benefit to go back and look at it. So I don't know that Jimmy should have lost his spot, but I'm not sure that Brad should have lost his spot either. Then everybody's going to say, well, they had to throw the caution for something. Well, the flagman threw the caution and shouldn't have maybe. I wasn't there again. I wasn't there. I'm seeing it all on video. I don't know. how different would it have been? I mean, put this, and this is something they probably didn't think about. You know, let's say Brad wasn't leading. Let's say he was running fifth, and somebody wrecked in front of him, and he spins out to keep from hitting him, but don't lose his position. I mean, doesn't ever stop. They're going to put him right. They're going to score him in fifth because he didn't stop. If he's running fifth before, they're going to put him right back in the same spot.
Right.
So, you know, the same thing happened at an MLR race, and I mean, at the time, and I argued this race and that, and of course, me being me, I still believe I'm right.
Well, sure you do.
We're racing at Nevada, Missouri, at an MLR race, and John Anderson, they have some kind of wreck or something, and he goes in the pit, in the infield, spins around, does all kind of donuts or whatever, and comes out, and they put him back in the lead. I never did the video. There was so much dust, even with the video, I couldn't tell for sure that he stopped going forward, and all of that, you know, and obviously the call was they put him back to the lead and he won the race. But you know, it's the same thing. It's two opposites of the thing. You know, obviously John was in the infield spinning around, but got his spot back. Brad's on the racetrack spinning around, and they sent him to the back. I don't know. I don't think he should have had to go to the back.
All right.
But like I say, that's all from video, so at least I think with this show, right off, this is a good show to start off, because surely we can create some controversy here.
Well, you know, listen, people say, oh, you just like to stir the pot or whatever. No, it's not necessarily that, but,
no.
you know, if it's there, I don't see why you should sit and try to ignore it. You know, so many people, they try to just be so stuffy and you know, whatever the case may be. That's not the way that Stick and I are. We're not going to sit and blast somebody or something, but you know, if something comes up, it's worth a discussion.
I've been I haven't been to Tucson. I've never been because I quit going before when they moved that race from Casa Grande and all that. But even and you know, we had a little success in Arizona early when, you know, out there, but even then, you know, it's Arizona, and things happen there that don't happen everywhere else. You know, and I'm not picking on Ernie or whoever's doing it now, because Ernie's, but they had a lot of weird rules there, even then, and did things weird compared to what we're used to. Well, you know, if you're from Arizona, maybe it's not weird, but you know, and so and everybody kind of knows that. I mean, the people that go out there, so. The backside of that is if you go to Arizona and something happens that you're not used to, well, it's Arizona, and that's a good chance it is going to happen that way. I mean, you know, so I don't know. It is what it is.
All right, let's jump on to our final point here, and we'll need to go a little bit abbreviated, but I just want to touch on it. Probably the only time throughout the course of the year we'll touch on anything open wheel related. Now, I can't guarantee that 100%, but I'd say that's a pretty good bet. I think the Chili Bowl is probably the best race of the year, bar none, in my opinion. Now, granted, I don't go every year, but I've certainly been a lot in the past. Been to single nights, been to the entire thing, start to finish, and it's really pretty hard to beat that event from a terms of sheer number of competitors, sheer number of fans, talent, the racetrack, the fact that it's January and miserable outside. It's so unique. I think it is the best race of the year. Kevin Swindell won it this year 4 in a row. At what point does a repeat winner, though, hurt the not the stature of an event, but the maybe the fans' perspective as they leave out of an event?
Well, I don't know. The obviously, you know, he's a Swindell, and the car's a Swindell prepared car, and so they know how to race, and they know to do that. So and they show up, and they expect to win. I think the time is there. I really think that after talking to a couple guys that are involved in midget racing, that there's enough scuttlebutt about it, you know, enough, you know, whisper and talking that it's starting to upset, you know, and I don't want to say they're whining, but, you know, they're starting to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And you know, what the deal is they're basically, there's no rules for that race. It's kind of a wide open race. And you take a handful of guys, or even less, build cars for that race, and this is what you created. And I'm with you. It's a tremendous event. You know, not even Lanny or Emmett could have imagined what it's grown into when they started. You know, it's a one of a kind event. It'll never be duplicated. ever. And they do a tremendous job of putting everything together and getting all that put on and all that. But they really need to stop and look at this deal. And there was 4 cars there this year that's the only place that they're legal to race. And of those 4 cars, 3 of them ran in the top 4 spots. And all with good drivers in them, and one of them had some tough luck and didn't make the show. Was in the B, got caught up in the B. But those out of those 4 cars, 3 of them ran first, second, fourth, and those are cars that were built specifically for the Chili Bowl. Yeah, they're a midget. They look like a midget and all that, but their rules they're not the same rules. They're not built with the rules in line with USAC and the Power I series and stuff that governs most of midget racing around now. And so I think it's time to say, hey, great, Kevin Swindell, he's a great racer, along with his dad and Tim McCready as well. But let's put those guys, on a level playing field for this event, so that great if Kevin Swindell wins it 5 years in a row, that's great. But let's make sure that he's doing it, because not everybody can justifiably go build a car just for the show, and it would just take a couple of things to fix that.
I see. Real quick here as we wrap up. Interesting perspective. I didn't know the first, second, and fourth they were that purpose built. I knew the Swindells didn't race theirs anywhere but the Chili Bowl, but I didn't realize that they weren't necessarily legal for anywhere but the Chili Bowl.
Yeah, the 47 cars that McCready drive and that Gardner drove also are cars that are built specifically for the Chili Bowl. And those cars are lighter. They're a little lighter. This just the same street that as racers you do absolutely. They did a great job. You do what you're supposed to win the race. Can't take that away from them. But not everybody goes and does that. And I don't know. It's kind of neat that he won it 3 years in a row. It's a little neat that he won it 4 years in a row. But at what point do you keep your show the way it's always been? And that's what it's been. It's never had any rules and all that stuff. And to keep it exactly the way it's been, over preserving, where everybody feels like they got a chance to win the race. And the crowd's going to get tired of it. I don't say that people's going to quit coming, but, I don't think that's anywhere near, but I think something needs to be done before they have a problem.
All right. Well, I appreciate your insight and input. I want to get in next time we talk here in a couple weeks briefly, and you'll probably know a little bit more, but briefly about your plans on 2013. Include that in our next discussion. I kind of wanted to get to it here tonight, but we just don't have time to do it. I want to let everybody know, though, before we do sign off, that Racing Dirt, Stick and I, and Sam will be there as well. We'll be at the Bodie's Race Auction in Sedalia this weekend. Kind of Al's home for 3 days in the past years. He's been there quite a bit. The first event we'll cover this year will be the USMTS season opener in Baytown, Texas, February 21st through the 3rd. We will have live audio of that all 3 nights, and there will be on-demand video following each one of the events. You'll be able to subscribe to Racing Dirt, $4.99 a month or $50 for the year, as we'll get set to roll out our action for the 2013 season at that time. Also, According to Al has a Facebook page. Thanks to your lovely wife for setting that up for us. I appreciate that very much. Facebook.com/According to Al. RacinDirt.com also on Facebook as well. Just search RacinDirt.com. One of the things that I hadn't even told you about, I'm going to spring this one on you. I'd like to do a mailbag portion of the show where they can either email us RacinDirt@RacinDirt.com. That's with no G. RacinDirt@RacinDirt.com. In the subject line, put According to Al, or leave any questions that you might have that you want the man, the myth, the legend to answer on the According to Al Facebook page there. Just comment and write on the Facebook wall. If it's appropriate and something worthy, we'll certainly throw it out there and discuss it. So be a nice way for some of your fans to interact with you and some people that are interested in what we're doing.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, the whole deal here, we just need to create some interest and hope to make it fun for everybody. And And, you know, I don't want anybody to take me too seriously, you know, and get all mad or nothing. But, you know, we're here to say what we think, and hopefully, you know, maybe we can get some good questions out of that. You know, the people listening, I'm sure that they'll have some questions along the line, and they may have, you know, some very good questions.
All right, that's it. Not a whole lot of bells and whistles here on the first episode. We'll add to this as we go. It's kind of a work in progress, and that's what we both discussed that it would be, and we'll see where it goes from here. Al, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Trenton.
All right, that's according to Al, episode 1, right here on RacinDirt.com.